Hello and welcome to Section 8, Part 3, where we're going to be looking at creating an actual command. So in the previous video, in video 1, we talked about concrete commands, and this is what we're going to be creating. One thing I probably should have mentioned at the start of the last video was that this data that we were setting up is this specific data is not required for the command queue system. You will need some kind of data. This is the data I've created for my system. So if you're just looking to do just like the command queue and all that sort of stuff, you don't necessarily need this exact data, but this data in some form, I'd say you're probably going to need. And I didn't finish off this last bit here, and I forgot to create the navigation struct, but I think we don't really need that right now, so we might come back to that. Let's start on the actual command system. So I'm going to close this private before I make a mistake. I think under framework, we're going to create a command system folder and add the command system in there. So this is, if you recall our diagram, we're making a concrete command class now. It's going to be straight from the U object, and we'll put it in this framework command system folder. And while we're at it, I may just create the navigate to one as well. So this is our first, that command class is our base class, and then this is an actual command that we might issue. All right. So this base class will have the functions that will implement into the other child commands. Some will be pure virtual, some won't be, but this is how the command holds everything it needs to execute the command or do whatever it does, right? So you're going to have an execute. So we're going to have a undo, have a redo, complete. Every command will need to do or implement these things. If it doesn't have it, then it's not capable of doing it. We could just make all these pure virtual and not do anything on the base command class, but what we can do is if we make them implemented, say for the execution as an example, we can call the super on the execution. And so if there's something that we need to do for every single command that is executed, then we can put it into this base class. And there's one thing that I'm going to do, and it'll just be to set the command as active, and we might as well, because that's going to need to happen for every command that gets executed and then it's active, then we might as well just put it in this base class, save us doing repetitive code in all our other. So if we had like navigate to and a whole bunch of other ones, saves putting that code in there. The two undo and redo, I'm just going to make pure virtual. There's not anything I can think of, but I haven't properly fully implemented these yet, but that's just because I haven't put the code in the navigate to implementation. So to do a pure virtual in Unreal, I think it's Unreal has this macro. So it's just the pure virtual macro, and then you put in the class, the class, and the function. And then we don't have return type, so we're just going to put in a semicolon there. I'll do the same for redo. So now these don't need implementation in this class. And then for the complete, we're actually going to pass the fguid, which is the ID, you recall, from our data setup. And then for my implementation, to keep it generic, you probably want to put a struct here that has the data that you need. But for my implementation, I'm going to pass back the group. For now, I might change this later because it doesn't sort of work with every implementation. Most of my entity stuff will be passed through the group because I want the group to distribute to the entities. So if you're doing a different setup, these might be something different. And then we want the command status. So we're going to include the data types. Status update, and I'll do there. So that now we can sort of, when we get a complete that comes through, we can say, was it aborted or was it completed, whatever the status is. And the other thing our command's going to need is, and I'm just going to put it in public here, so it's just readable on the command. You could do a getter for it if you want, but this is just going to be the command data. Command data. And I'm going to just call it data. I'm going to protected section here, and this will have some other functions that we need. So check if it's a valid command. And that'll be what we'll call in the execute. We'll add a check to get the actual status of the command. We're going to need to... Yeah. I want to include. All right. We're going to need to have a function that sets up some data when we assign a selection, and that goes along with the lead index and all that sort of stuff. And we're going to have a function that is used in the assign selection data, get the center location of the command, just like a utility function. In the public section here, I'm just going to do set, and I'll do get at the top. These will just be setters and getters interfacing to our data, just to save us doing data dot everything. And first setter I want is this is the player selections with an S. I think we'll just add this the getters and setters as we go. I think we're gonna. It's just so we can read the data easier. We'll leave that. Let's just build these functions out. You can see there it hasn't included those pure virtual functions. There's no undo or redo. So in the execution, I'm just going to call activate. And then in that actual activate function, I'm going to read the data and update the status to command status active. I'm just going to put a note in here because we can use this activation to talk to the group and do some command monitoring stuff to know when the command's completed and things like that. But I'm just going to update this here. So the invalid is valid, sorry, not invalid. That's just going to return that we have selections. So selected selections greater than 0, sort of just a way of verifying that the data is valid. If there's no selections, then there's nothing to really do anything to. No receivers sort of thing, entities. So I think we might have to do this part because we're going to need to do it. What we need, on the command, we need some way to validate that the command is finished. What we're going to have down here is a map of the groups. So what will happen is we'll hand off the command to each of the groups that need to be involved, but back on the actual command, we'll keep tabs on what groups have finished the command. So when a group does finish, they'll send back to the actual command, hey, I've completed this command, and then the command won't fire off back to whoever that this command is completely finished until all the groups are finished. Hope that makes sense. So we're just going to keep a map of group to status. And then we can just iterate through that and check that they're all complete, and then we're done. So let's actually do this now. So it's going to be for the selected selections. And if that selection is valid, we're going to need some checks here. So let's just put some notes. We're going to have to bounce around a bit because these commands are talking to things like our group and whatnot. So yeah, I'll try and not make it too confusing. Let's just add our entry into our map. So that's just grabbing the current status, which on activation will be active. So now let's go to our group, choose on the entities group. And down the bottom here, we're going to create another section. So we're going to want to check here, just returning bool. Let's assign the command, and we'll just use the GUID for that. Well, we want to check if it's already completed the command. And then in a protected section, we're going to have a couple of arrays. We're going to have one array for the current commands. So we're going to include for declaration. And this one's going to be command history. So this is just for the group. This is not to do with what we talked about with queues, and this is just for the group to manage its own commands. So these are pretty similar. We just want to do a for loop over the commands. I might actually make a getter for that. So come back to the command, make it first getter here, and this is going to return fgood. Like, it's pretty simple, it's not a long bit of code there, but I think these make it nice and neat. So if it's equal to the ID we're looking for, then we're assigned it, aren't we? Yeah. And then the bottom one's going to be exactly the same. If it's in the command history, then we're going to say it's done, and then that means we have completed it. So back to our command, I'm going to say not group assign the command. I need to pass the ID, and not completed. So, and then we add them. So in check status, we want to check if all the group statuses are set to complete. So what we're going to do, because it's a map, we can just spit out an array of the value. So if we come back to our array, so we can just generate an array of this. Let's copy that actually. We can call it group status or group states, maybe. Statuses. So group status, generate, it's a value array, the value that we want the array of, and it's states. And just do a for loop on that, I think, for each. And I'm going to make that const reference. Now, if it's equal to active, then there's still a group. If any of those, anything in this array is equal to active, then there's still a group still doing it. So we can straight away return, I'm going to return active. And we could do some more checks here to see, like, because we've got a whole bunch of states here. But for now, we're just going to say if there's none of them that are active, then we're done. It's finished. So we're going to return completed. So for command fail, we're going to need to set up some delegates. So let's come back to the H file. Underneath our definitions there, let's just declare some delegates. We need a 2 param, and we're going to need a 1 param. That's it. So the first one will be on command complete. And it's going to pass the command ID. I think that's all we need to pass. I'm going to change that to a 1 param as well. I was going to pass success, but oh no, I have to pass it because we're not passing the actual command. Sorry, just don't do that. Because we're only passing the ID, we want to pass whether it was successful or not, because we'll need that down the line. I think that'll come in when we go to put our command in the history. If it's failed or aborted, we don't want to put it in the history. It wasn't successful, so we're just going to pass that along. And then this one's obviously for failed, so and we're just going to pass the good. I think I'll put these in here. and then copy this failed one. If we fail, we'll broadcast it. So then on complete, actually on complete we first need to, sorry, on the fail, we need to, I made a mistake here. This is, we don't need to pass the ID back on here, but we do need to pass the group. And we need to pass the group to failed as well. Cut that out. And then there. Because what we're going to have to do is when, this is the two functions that are either going to be called when a command is ended or a group has ended their command. So we're going to have to update the that status array and on each instance of this. We need to get the command status from the map, which will be a pointer. And for this one, we're going to set the pointer to failed. Sorry. We didn't have it failed. Let's just go do that. The failed's sort of a bit of a special case because it shouldn't really ever fail. So we're going to stop them and then we're going to broadcast failed. Actually, sorry, we need to, this is where we need to check if the status is equal to, it's actually going to be completed. But it's sort of like just saying has the command ended. Because the example that I can use here is, say we've got 2 units moving. The first one moves and it's successful. The second one times out or whatever and it sends back failed. If we just search for failed in the check, then we won't realize that actually everyone's finished the command now. So this is sort of what we're doing. We're just saying, hey, has this command completed? Whether it's failed or passed or aborted, doesn't matter. And that's where we're going to do this. I actually don't think we need this. I'm going to backtrack. Sorry. I'm going to take this out for now. Just overcomplicating it. Because this can just be completed with a state of false. That tells it like it was failed. We don't want to put it in the command history or something like that. Or we can handle it some other way. It's pretty much the same thing here for complete. This is going to be completed. This is going to be true. And we also want to, in here, oops, just go into the data. I won't do a setup for this, but we want to update the actual status to be completed as well. So that's when if we come in and look at this command later, it says it's not done. So now set selected. Obviously, we just want to set our data. But then we also want to kick off the assign selected data. So now this is going to need the center location. So we'll do this function first. And to get the center location, I'm just going to copy this. We're going to loop over our selections. And again, just check if it is valid. And then we would need to get the group lead. So it's going to be a actor. Oh, sorry, we need to check if the group lead is valid. So because we're going to use his position, because the group lead sort of does a center check as well. So this would be the most centered person in the group, and then we're going to use his position as the group position. I don't know if we've got a function to do that yet on the group, so we might have to implement that. Probably should put a check-in for group actually. I'll put a null check-in for group. In case. And then here is where we'll call a function get lead, which we're going to have to do. And for the get lead function, rather than, so the group has a reference to all its entities. So come back to the group. It has members. I'm going to change that to entities. So entities, the entities that belong to this group. However, when we're doing a get lead, it's the lead of the current selection of the current command. So it's not everyone in the group. So what we want to actually do is pass this selection's members and get the lead out of those selection members only. So that'll be members, which I'm also going to change. This is in player selection. I'm going to change this to entities as well. So we've got a uniform naming thing going on there, and I always refer to them as entities because it's going to be less confusing. And then once we have the center location, we've got our center location that we're passing through here, this vector, which is probably just going to be a 0 vector to begin with, but we can get our group lead location. And then once we've updated this center location, we get the average of those locations. So this is all the groups. We're getting the center of all the groups. We're just going to check that there was selections, because otherwise we'll do a divide by 0 here and have a bad day. This is just like a check to say, yeah, there's definitely going to be, actually I might actually put in here too, and center location, what is it, is nearly 0. Not nearly 0. So that's just checks if it's a 0 vector and by a small margin, so you don't have because of the float thing. And then if that's all good, then we can just divide our center location by the number of entities, number of groups, sorry, which is selections in this case. And that will give us an average center position. So let's go to our group and set up this command here, the get lead, and I'll put this in here. I'll return an actor, and it's going to take that array of actors, and we can pass that in by reference because we're not going to copy or anything, we're not changing it. So we're going to need to pass back our lead. And so what I've done, if you look back at where we spawn an entity, so group entities, you can see here that it's assigning I, which is the iterator of the loop, as the index for the entity. So I'm using this as like a rank. So you can actually use this get lead to get the highest ranked member. So this is going to get the lowest indexed member as the group lead. So if you've got indexes 0 to 4, so you've got 5 units in the team, and 0 would be the highest rank guy, and the way they spawn, he'd be in the center. But they might change as they move around. But if you select 0, 1, 2, it's always going to pick 0 as the lead. If you select 4, 5, 6, 4 is always going to be the lead. So you could actually change that in the player controller to assign a rank number based on the type of unit or whatever you want, and then use this get lead to get the highest ranked proper thing. But it's just a placeholder for that for now. But just so you know what I'm doing here and it makes sense. So we're just going to put a high number here. That should do it. Don't need to go too crazy. Okay, so if you're going to have more than 128 members in a group, don't use that. Anyway. And for the sake of clarity, and yes, that can be constant. All right, so for each entity, we're going to have to get the entity component because that's where we store all this stuff. Get index. I was wondering if we actually set that up yet, but we have, so that's good. And we're going to push back. If it's less than the leader index, then we want to update our group leader. Oh, sorry, lead. And our leader index with his index. And then once we've gone through and checked all those, we can return our lead. And actually, yeah, I might make that static. Now, if we come back to our command, got the lead. So that's good. That should get us our center location, and that's going back by reference when we use it. So we're going to use it just here. So let's create that center location, pass in. so now we have a position that's the center of the formation. We want to do that to choose a lead for this command. I'm just going to make sure that lead selection index is set to something invalid initially. And then let's just copy this. So if we've got selections, then we've got something to choose from, right? So let's do a distance just to initialize that. We're sort of doing a similar thing to how we chose the lead. We're just doing it for all those groups now. And we're trying to establish which group is the closest to the center of all the groups in the command that we're doing. That's getting the distance from the current lead to the center. And if that distance is less than our current distance, so if it's on our first instance, it'll be less than max float, which is huge. So it's going to be true. So that's in our array of selections, this is now the index of the lead. And it will go through and get the shortest distance one, and the final result will be the index of the closest one. So now we want to check that we got a selection lead, so let's just copy this again. So if that lead selection index evaluates to a proper index, we're going to get the group of that index. So I might just keep this here. Rather than selection, it's going to be data in lead selection index. Now, what we want to do now is use this group as the center of as the source of this command. So we're going to, in the data source transform, we're going to set the location to that leader group. We're going to need to do another function, I think. So we need just the generic positioner. So we're going to do another function. I'm going to call it get group center, but it's not going to be the full center of the whole group like before. It's going to be similar to the get lead. It's going to pass in the entities. So we're going to use data selections. Actually, it's over here, isn't it? Copy this. But it's going to be the lead groups. Like so. That'll be the origin location. So like if we did an undo, it would come back to that group being in the center at roughly their centered location. Let's just get this, go back to group. I'm going to return a vector this time. It's going to be the same input. So this one's going to be a vector that we're going to return. Oh, sorry, that's this we want to do it on, not the actual groups. Again, just the divide by zero check. And go back to our command. That should be good. So that's our, I'm just going to update this. Hang on. Sorry, that can be in here. For the rotation, what we're going to do is we're going to make a rotation from where we are now towards our current target. So there's a number of ways you can do the source rotation. You know, you could do it. Probably the best way to do it would be to have a rotation on the group, or yeah, so the group can be multiple groups. So, but so sort of an orientation that the group is facing. So say the group is as a formation, their main orientation is west, but they can look around and they can be looking all sorts of different directions as individuals. But if you maintain that orientation on the group, then you could use that here, which would probably be the most accurate. You're only going to ever use this source rotation when you do an undo. You know, they come back, which way do they face? Without storing every single entity's current position, this is the only way to sort of to do it. It's not going to be exact, but I think that this is good enough. I want to get the location. I just want to check if we have a target location. And that would be not nearly 0. If it is nearly 0, meaning it's not set, then we're just going to assign our source transform to a 0 rotator. Is what that'll do. But if it isn't, then we're going to create one. Make from X. And we can just do 2 quad. So it's basically getting a direction from our source location, which we just set, to our target location, and then making a rotation out of it. Just to be on the safe side, let's just do the source transform if we don't have anything that's valid here. So like the leader's invalid, I should say. We're just going to set the source transform to a 0 position. So that'll set the position, the rotation, all to 0, and we can then like do an is valid check on it, and it's not going to be valid because it's 0, rather than some magic number that memory assigns to it. I think that is our command, our base command, ready to go. One thing we do want to do actually is make it abstract. We don't want to create classes from this. So just being aware of time, of the length of this video, I'm going to end this video here. In the next part, we'll continue on with implementing the navigation to command. Thanks for watching. See you in the next part.